Welcome to San Joaquin Spotlight, a public affairs program featuring conversations about life in the central San Joaquin Valley. This program is brought to you in partnership between KFSR 90.7 FM and CMAC Fresno. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Today in the studio, we have Rebecca Caraveo. Did I say that right?
No, you're close.
I'm close enough. How do you properly say it?
Caraveo.
Caraveo.
Yes.
And she, actually, I was thinking about how to introduce you today, but I didn't really have the words because you do a lot of stuff. And
I do.
And you're involved in a lot of things. So let's start by talking about your background.
Okay. Generally, I'm from Fresno. I grew up here, went to school here, love it here. And my background is basically in administration, but I always wanted to be an artist when I was a kid, and I have been showing my art for about 20 some years now. I also play music. I have a rockabilly band, and I've been doing that for over 20 years.
And somewhere along the way, you found time to take groups of people to France.
Yes. Yes, I opened my own company about 7 years ago. It's called La Belle France. And it was one of those magical moments when you're in France. I had been going a few times with my friends to photograph. And I finally went by myself. And I went to Paris for about 4 days by myself. My mother is Belgian. So I'd gone to visit my relatives, you know, because you have to go visit your relatives. And then I went back to Paris for a few days by myself. And it's absolutely the most beautiful place in the whole world. I can't say it. And I just called home and I said, honey, I don't want to come home. My husband said, come back, you can go again. So a year or so later, I had, plotted to quit my day job and open my own business, taking people on tours of France, Paris and France.
So on these tours, where are you taking them? Obviously Paris, but do you take them anywhere else?
Yes, actually. My basic tour is Paris, and it's called, Your First Trip to Paris. It's an introductory tour. It's so you can learn to use the metro and how to get around without really speaking French, seeing all the main things so you can come back and see more. Because there are over 120 museums in Paris. And I like to think it's kind of the cradle of civilization and so much history going back thousands of years.
So I'm sure on this trip, you take people to see the one and only Mona Lisa, correct?
Oh, yes. We do that little quick tour. It's the Mona Lisa, the Winged Victory, Nike, and Venus de Milo. So we do that.
I have to ask you on the topic of France. I have to ask you to talk about the cheese and wine. What do you say about that?
Oh my goodness! I'm not a big wine drinker. You were asking about do we go to other places as well, and I've done a few trips. Because I'm a photographer, I've done some that are kind of photography based. But I love the Loire Valley. But Brittany, the food is to die for. The cheese, the butter. Just the food, the crepes, just are wonderful.
There you have it. So for our audience members who haven't been into France, then, maybe they should take a trip.
Maybe they should. Actually, they say Lyon and the other part of France is the gastronome capital of the world, which is lovely as well. I've been there. Last summer we did Barcelona to Provence. So if you're going to go without me, I suggest not going in the summer. Too many people, it's very hot and humid. You get a little more of the feel of it if you're not there with all those tourists.
So let's shift gears and talk a little bit about your part in KFSR radio because, our audience members watching this are watching on Comcast and AT&T, but they're also listening to us on KFSR. So talk about your KFSR partnership.
Well, I, along with my husband, we're the hosts of the Big Fresno Barn Dance. We took over that show about 2 years ago. It's been on the air on different stations for over 30 years. We highlight Western swing and classic country, And we also incorporate a lot of modern acts that are in the similar vein, not the music that you would hear on country stations so much mainstream, but traditional country music.
Is there a following for that? Because, you know, I watch a lot of movies, and I see sometimes in movies you get people doing dances and line dances and barn dances. In Fresno, is there a following?
We have a good radio listenership. We have a Facebook page with over 700 members. All over the world, I think it's bigger maybe than it is traditionally here in Fresno, but we're always a little, we like what's new, I think, in Fresno. Fresno's really about what's new. They're always trying to catch up with what's new. But I have a rockabilly band. We play 50s music. I've played it in France. Basically, there are huge scenes in Los Angeles, San Francisco, the East Coast, Japan. It's huge in Europe. They love country music. They love traditional rockabilly as well, which is a little bit more rock and roll. And there's also the whole genre of Americana, which is kind of a folk thing, which we don't really kind of hit a lot on the folk music. Ours is more traditional Western swing and classic country.
When are you on? Because I can tell right now, as people are watching this, they're wondering when they can tune in to this great music.
Every Sunday afternoon from
Sunday
2 to 4
afternoon?
p.m. It's myself. I go by my band name, Caddy Ness, and Johnny B is my co-host and husband and my guitar player. And he's pretty much the Western swing aficionado, where I'm the classic country. And because we're out in our scene, out in the custom culture, we call it, we play all kinds of new bands too. We play, or bands that aren't so new to us, but they're new to people who listen to mainstream radio.
And earlier when I called you, you were at Arte Americas doing something over there. So talk about your role with Arte Americas.
Well, as I'm the curator, or the assistant curator, or the co-curator. I work with Frank Delgado, who's the executive director. We worked in radio together. And when he became the director, he would always say, I'm going to have you come help me. I really want you to come help me. I have an art background. And about a year ago, he called me up and said, you can start next week. I said, Frank, what are you talking about? He said, I want you to come help me at Arte. I'm getting ready to do the Plaza season, and I need someone that can help me, you know, coordinate it and make it run a little smoother. And so now I've been there about a year working. I work part-time there, but I basically work with the art and the artists, setting up the shows, and a lot of the promotional type things with Frank. So
I pass by Arte Americas every morning when I go to work, and every evening when I go home from work. And I'm always looking at what new things are up at Arte Americas, because every time I pass by, there's something going on. And so the other day I passed by, there were these huge tents, and I thought to myself, oh, they're getting ready for a party.
we did. We had a wonderful party. That was a 100-foot tent, and it was our Mother's Day celebration. And that way all the moms get to sit in the shade. It featured a brunch, and they had mariachi music and different things like that. And we're getting ready for Plaza now.
Well, and there's the one time I went, not one time, but recently when I went, the Mexican consulate was doing something over there, and I had the first time I've ever had delicious, they look like tamales wrapped in banana leaf. It was delicious. But there's a lot of things happening at Arte Americas.
There really, really are. Our show has just come down. It came down Mother's Day. We had a wonderful show, a women's show, called 1 Degree of Separation, where we had different ladies from all over California, 35 different artists, show their work. And we started with Women's History Month and ended with Mother's Day. And then we took it down. We're taking it down right now in painting, and we're getting ready to have a show that is sponsored by the Mexican consulate, Alvaro Blancarte, who is a very famous muralist from Mexico City. So we're expecting his art within the week, and like I said, we're painting and getting ready, and that's kind of my job, coordinating the shows we will actually feature another show with some artists from New York, and from here they're doing a collaboration. Jeanette Herrera, who is very popular here, has invited some of her New York friends, and they'll have a room. And then we have another woman from Utah, Laura Romero, and she is featuring farm workers and salt oil paintings. They're very, very beautiful and touching.
Interesting. So talk a little bit more about that. So are these photos of farm workers, or what?
They're actually oil paintings.
Oil paintings of farm
Hers
workers?
are, yes, of the fields. She has done a beautiful series. She's originally from the Valley, but she lives in Utah now.
That's going to be interesting. I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
I'd love to see all the things that go on there if I had time, but that's going to be
It's
an
all
interesting
one big
to-
show. We have 3 different galleries, 10,000 square feet of gallery space. So we've got a lot, and Mr. Blancarte's are huge images. So Laura and Jeanette will be in the Fresno Art Museum gallery, which is one of our smaller galleries.
So why should people come out and see those things at Arte Americas? I mean, you mentioned several artists coming from around the nation, New York even. Why should people come out and see that?
Well, you know, I think that Fresno is really becoming a little art town. I know it's kind of the buzz. I was shocked to see that there are over 30 galleries downtown
Wow.
now.
I
Did you
didn't
know
know that.
that?
I didn't
30
know that.
In downtown.
Wow.
It used to be when we started Art Hop years ago, because I've belonged to Spectrum for almost 25 years, that the Tower District was the happening art place. Well, now there's 7 galleries in the Tower and 30 downtown.
Wow. There's a shift.
It's like, it's really, really wonderful to see the whole growth downtown. And people are always really shocked by it. When we opened our women's show, our Art Hop, we had almost 700 people come in that night, just one night.
And, you know, just around the studio here, there's a lot of activity as we speak.
Yeah.
As you and I are talking, there's a lot of activity here in downtown, and, you know, there's housing in downtown and new housing and restaurants.
Beautiful things
so
just popping up.
a lot of stuff happening. Now let's talk, it's a perfect segue into what I want to talk about next is your art, because you're also an artist, and you've sent me a bunch of photos that you've done, not photos, paintings that you've done.
Well, actually, I am a photographic artist.
Okay.
So, but my forte is, well, we say that in American, forte. It's not really, the French word is fort, it means strength. And my strength has always been hand-colored photographs. They're the vintage style that you would see your grandmother's photograph painted by hand with oil colors. That was my passion for many years, and as digital has come up, we have lost the paper that you paint on. It has turned into a lesser quality kind of shiny paper that it's not as much cotton, the paint doesn't stick on it. So I've changed my style. You'll see that in the image called My Favorite House.
And for our audience, I wish that our radio listeners could watch this, and I'm going to encourage them to tune in to the visual San Joaquin Spotlight, because as you talk about your artwork, we're going to show the artwork on the screen. So talk about...
Well, originally, if you see Yosemite Falls, that was in the traditional style of a hand-painted oil photograph. You use the very sheer oil color, and that's what that style is. We'll see that. And then when we get to My Favorite House, which is a beautiful house covered with ivy in Montmartre, the hill above Paris, I had to change my style. I had to change the whole way I made it happen, because I couldn't make it happen that way anymore. When I said it was a dying art, it was absolutely a dying art. It is faded away that you can't even recreate it very much anymore. So now I shoot my images digitally and in color, and I generally take the color out of them and do some different things to them in the computer, and then send them to watercolor paper, where then I paint them or use pastels and come up with a different effect that I like very much.
So how has your experience, whether it's taking people to France, whether it's KFSR, whether it's all these hats that you wear, how has that helped in your artwork, or has it helped in your artwork?
It's absolutely helped in my artwork. It's just being around so many wonderful artists, and it's just a constant inspiration. You see all these beautiful things, or meet artists who do things a little bit differently than you, and it's like, okay, I want to try that now, or maybe if I can apply it to my art this way and that. The fun thing that I've done, and it was a few years ago, it was kind of scandalous at Spectrum. Spectrum is a strictly photographic gallery. I had my first iPhone show.
Interesting. iPhone show.
Yes, where my images were created through my iPhone, whether through apps or, well, they were basically apps that either manipulated the photograph as a photograph, or you put your photograph into it and then manipulate it. And then but I would have them printed as I would have any of my regular art. Size is limited, and like I said, it was kind of scandalous because photographers were very upset that you could take photographs with your phone, let alone make
I could imagine,
art with
yeah,
that.
I could imagine.
So I've had three iPhone shows now, and last year at Fresno Art Museum Gallery, one of my very small iPhone glass prints went for a very good amount of money. So I think we kind of got accepted back into the art world, that maybe it wasn't so bad if people could see that you can really create them. And so we'll see some of those as well, the Tower Theater or Montserrat, that kind of thing.
And is there still a way for people to make a living through art? I mean, you know, obviously we've all heard of the Van Gogh paintings and Da Vinci and all these paintings that fetch up millions and millions of dollars. But for the local artist here in Fresno, the one that doesn't have the Van Gogh name or doesn't have this very big name, can they make a living doing this?
Well, if you're just doing art to sell, everyone kind of goes about it a different way. Some people maybe have some kind of unlimited income, and they can
Must be nice to have
right,
that disposal
and can
income.
leisurely create a lot of art, and then they don't have to worry so much, because it is expensive to make art as well. But some people like myself, you can sell pieces for, because I sell prints, I sell my images over and over. I don't sell my hand-colored photographs anymore because they're very rare. But I can sell prints of them and keep that up. Also, people go into different modes of selling art. Some people will consistently sell art and always try to find a venue to sell it. Some people do art for sale, like, you know, one gal, she is constantly creating things for people and personalized art. So it just depends. It depends how much money you want, and if you're creating big pieces and you have a name for yourself, you can generally make a pretty good living. But you need to work up to it. A lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to start doing it and people are going to...
Yeah, I'm just going to paint this
it
and everybody's going to buy
that way.
it.
You have to make a name for yourself, and you have to become like myself. I've been doing it for over 20 years. There's certain people who collect my art. I can't say there's a lot of people who do, but there are certain people who every show make sure that they have a piece of my art and have for almost 20-something years.
How does that make you feel? I mean, I'm not an artist, but I can imagine if I created a piece of artwork and someone hangs it on their wall, I would feel good that I've brought positive energy or happiness to them. How does it make you feel?
It's a total elation thing that I learned very well. My very first show, I had someone tell me, who was looking at my show, your art is too pretty.
Your art is too pretty.
And I thought, and who really cares about your opinion? Because I'm making it for me, and there are other people who like it. And the more you feel comfortable with yourself and making your art or making your music, it becomes better. You know, you gravitate towards like-minded people or people who inspire you, other artists or musicians, and you just want to make it too. And all of a sudden there are people who are like, wow, that's really lovely, and I would like that hanging in my home. And that, I don't think you can really beat that feeling. I really like it.
Talk about some of your other pieces of art, because as you talk about them, we're going to put them on screen. So talk about.
Well, I think what I've sent you a lot of is, like I said, Yosemite Falls. That's one of my hand-painted photographs. I've sent a few pieces that were the squares that come from my phone. But I also, straight photography, some people collect straight photography. So I've added like Gavarnie, which is when you asked if I took people to other places in France. I really love the megalithic areas of France to see the big stone dolmen. Because there, as opposed to Stonehenge in England, you can walk up to them and touch them, or you can go inside them. It's very exciting.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, and they'll be on the side of the road. So I've sent you some images like that, Mana Caronade. They've got very strange Celtic names, even though it's in France. Gavarnie, it's an island with a big tomb on it, the megalithic tomb that's 6,000 years old. These are some of the images. But what first got me going to France was a book called Foucault's Pendulum by Umberto Eco. And so you see the image of Foucault's pendulum in the Pantheon. That's one of my images that I'm...
What's your favorite place in France? Tough question.
Well, gosh, it is a tough question. If I'm just going to eat, maybe, I think that I really, really love Rouen. I love Joan of Arc and the history of Joan of Arc. And it's a very big part of France, how France became a country. And the food, it's in Normandy, so the cheese is incredible. And they have wonderful, what they call artisanal bakers. And so they have these really ancient recipes of bread that are just to die for. And then all kinds of seafood, because it's very, very close to the ocean, mussels and that kind of thing.
Last time I was there, we walked down, and it's not spelled this way because I had trouble saying it. Champs-Élysées, or I don't know.
There you go.
Well,
there you said
you
it
speak
correctly.
French, so you know better than me.
Champs-Élysées.
What is this? Talk about this
What
area.
is the Champs-Élysées?
Yeah, what is it?
Well, it translates to the Elysian Fields. Okay, so that's just the name of it. And it is a very, very large road, and in the late 1800s, when it was Napoleon III, he had a gentleman named Haussmann who went through and took out a lot of the medieval things and made the roads very, very large and grand. And they were for the rich people to basically be in their carriages and be seen. So the Champs-Élysées starts at the Arc de Triomphe. And if you're standing on the top of it, you can look all the way down to the Louvre. It goes all the way down to the Place de la Concorde, and then from there down right straight to the Louvre.
You're making me want to go to France, by the way, but just so you know.
It's magnificent. It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen. I really, really love that. Because you can just keep walking around and never have to go in anything. So, of course, in France, you know, they kind of love the sunshine, and there isn't always a lot of sunshine. So on one side of the Champs-Élysées, it's more expensive to buy the property there because the sun is out, and that's where all the little cafes are, and some of the fancy stores, the Sephora store, and that kind of thing.
When you take a group, English, can they get by just by speaking English, or do they have to know French?
No, they definitely can get by with me speaking English, because if I have to speak French, I will. And I've also have made sure that everything's already kind of taken care of. And that's what I was saying earlier, that I try to teach them how to go to France and be okay with it. And it's definitely to your benefit if you can learn to say a few words, especially, you know, excuse me, can you help me, do you speak English? Kind of in that order. Because once they realize you're trying, even if your French is bad, they'll say, oh, let me help you, I can speak English a little, right? And my problem is, like you said, my mother is from Belgium. I have a very good French accent. She's actually Flemish, which is the Dutch version. But that whole growing up, I grew up in Europe. My dad was in the service. mimicking people. That's where you learn to speak a language, right? So I can speak French, and then they will start blah 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 blah. And I'm like, wait a minute, can they say? But you speak French so well, and I say only the few things I can say. So, but if I think about it, I've had enough French, college, and high school, and junior high, and private lessons where I can pretty much have a conversation with you. But my trips are all planned. So every day we go to 2 museums and have lunch somewhere. Then the next day we kind of do it again. We do a wine and cheese tasting event at Au Chateau, which is really, really wonderful. You learn all about the different French wines and what cheeses they go with, and comes with, you know, cold cuts and beautiful bread, and it's just a wonderful experience. By the end of the week, they've learned to use the metro, and I give them maybe a half a day off, or if they want to go do something on their own, or we'd go somewhere like to Versailles or something.
Well, you know, we're out of time this week
Oh,
on the
no.
program. It flew by. You've provided us with some wonderful, wonderful information about yourself, the community, France, art, and everything else. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me, John.
That's all for this edition of San Joaquin Spotlight. To the volunteer crew that make this production and every production possible, thank you. Their names appear at the end of the show in the credits. We couldn't do the show without them. Thank you to our audience members watching this broadcast on Comcast and AT&T Television, listening to this broadcast on 90.7 KFSR Fresno. Hope you enjoyed today's program. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Tune in next week to a new edition.